then we will go ahead and get started. I'm Tami Heim. I'm the president of Christian Leadership Alliance, which is located just south of here in San Clemente. And it's just such an honor to be able to be here with all of you. What I'm going to cover today may feel a little bit different than some of the other sessions. We've had such a rich morning. I had the opportunity to kick it off with John, and I ended up with 6 pages of notes and completely inspired, and I know that you guys are getting so much good information here. Today I'm going to talk about CLA and in the form of a case study, and just some of the things that we have learned over the past couple of years as we've taken the strategy of a ministry and an organization and we brought it to life online. So where we're going to go today, going to do a quick reality check. I don't know if you've heard of the disease KE2BD. I don't know, has anybody heard of that? I'm just going to touch on that just for a minute. Talk a little bit about what was inherited when I walked into CLA, how we found our way home. The things we learned about the significance of being able to see clearly in a digital strategy, and then what were some of the must-haves we walk away with. We'll break down a little bit of the new home, just as an example to help connect the dots for you between what the digital intention was and then what it looked like on there, how we constructed the highway, a little bit about our evolution, and then end with just some of the outcomes. So, KE2BD, that's me. All right, I know enough to be dangerous. I started my life in the retail world, and in terms of technology, I would say that my life starting in retail looked more like Lydia as a merchant. And then it was really the time in the 70s when information technology took hold, and all of a sudden the things that we were selling, barcodes were developed. I mean, yeah, I'm that old. And we really started to capture and understand information in a completely different way. Spent 22 years in retail, then moved into the book specialty business with Borders. And there, you know, everything seemed pretty status quo. We were going to build a lot of new bookstores. Things were great. We had wonderful information technology systems. Everything looked good. And then the dot-com boom came. And it literally rocked everything. And it happened right the year before I became the president. And today I still count it pure joy that Amazon was the poster child for that whole dot-com era, and it happened to be in the book business. And it really did turn things completely upside down. And when I became president, I inherited that digital space, and I had to be really transparent. I said, no, you don't understand. I'm not even sure that I am effective at the floppy disk transfer, and we're going to take this on. But it was just appropriate, and it was timely, and let's just say the digital boat had headed out way before my time, and I got in the motorboat to go catch it at that point in time. Left Borders at a time when I thought it was great, it was healthy, we'd figured out the digital piece. I went to be a stay-at-home mom, and then got called into Christian publishing. And there I thought, hey, you're going to create content, right? It doesn't matter if it's sold on Amazon or it's sold in a bookstore, it's still great content. And it wasn't too long till all of that caught up. I remember sitting in New York and saying, ebooks, they'll never figure out that technology. And then got smack into it, as well as Web 2.0 and social media. And all of a sudden, this filter of people going through and understanding publishing and producing content, no filter was needed anymore. That now every time you post, you're basically broadcasting a message and making it known, which is exactly what publishing is. I left Thomas Nelson, and I went to actually work as a partner in a brand development tech firm. And I feel like that was God's conditioning for such a time as this. And it was really when, on my life, I said, God, what are you doing? You know, people always say, in such a time as this, you were called to do that. They use that as encouragement, right? And people would always speak that into my life, and I'm like, yeah. And then, as only God would do, laid me flat out and said, how do you take that so trite? What are people speaking into you? What am I saying to you through people? And it wasn't about me, it was about the fact, what is the time that we're in? And God gave me an enormous heart for the mission field that is online, for what it is to be Christians and represent Him in that time and place. And then I got my digital groove on in a more robust way. And then God called me out to Christian leadership Alliance. So I say that to tell you I know enough here today to be dangerous. This idea of high performance that's in the headline, I don't want you to think this is stellar. I'm not standing here to profess we are rock star status. We're appropriate in where we are, and we're continuing to evolve. And that with every step we take, we're improving the performance to a higher level. And in that performance, we're reaching and hopefully changing more lives. A little bit about CLA. CLA serves nonprofit ministries. So we work with the big ones like Compassion and World Vision, the Navigators, the Salvation Army. I love the Salvation Army, and the more I know about them, the more I continue to fall in love with them. Compassion International, the Gospel Rescue Missions all across the country. So these are nonprofit leaders, and we really deal with the leadership piece of it. So I wouldn't say that what we do really involves all of their organizations, but it does their CEOs, their CFOs, their directors, and the people that are over some of the specialty areas that they do. So I was called out to go into this area. CLA is a subsidiary of Azusa Pacific University, which most people don't understand. It's a part of their belief in the lifelong journey of a leader, and that we target that nonprofit space. So I get the call to come and talk to them, and I'll be honest, I had never heard of them. Here I've been in Christian publishing all those years, and I never heard of Christian Leadership Alliance. So I made my way out to California, and I did what everyone does before you go on an interview. I Googled them to see what I could find out, because Googling is important. One time I was interviewing for a board position with Ann Taylor back in my retail day, and I went in and I sat down and had this conversation with the CEO. And we're talking, and I'm thinking, he's really not asking me any questions. And I said, is there anything you really want to know? And he goes, oh, I don't need to. And he threw a stack on the table this thick. He goes, I've Googled you. Now, I had never Googled me, right? And so I am legitimately freaking out. First of all, one, that I hadn't done that myself. Second, I had no idea what all that paper said about me. And the third thing is I didn't know if it was true or not. I mean, I didn't even know, but he thought it was. So, Google, the ultimate gospel in so many areas. So I Googled CLA, and this is what I got. Now, again, I'm sitting in the position of working in a tech firm. Look, I know, that's just it. Your head is spinning. It's everything, all on one page. It's the urgency that says, we got to tell people about that, and it's got to be before the fold line. And I looked at it, and while it was so messy to my mind, it was compelling to my heart. Because I looked at that, and after what I'd been doing consulting, ministries and nonprofits about their websites, I said, there is so much opportunity and upside with what I see here. But what was interesting is that I spent all this time searching all these random navigational links on the website and never really could get the story of CLA, even though they had the website. And this was my inheritance. And I thought, well, if the interview doesn't go well, I could always just pitch our services and try to say, I think I could really help you with what needs to happen. So I started there in January of 2012. And really, it was all about finding our way home. So we had this messy mess, and it was like, okay, how do we deconstruct that now? And how do we go back and figure out what are we supposed to be? How do we make sense of this mess and who we were as an organization and a ministry? And what was interesting is that CLA had gone through lots of changes. It started in 1976 when dear Ted Engstrom at World Vision really felt like we need to train ministries to run their business with the same kind of excellence that you would expect from anywhere else, right? That we needed that level of standard, and that excellence was part of our witness. And through lots of changes and consolidation, that used to be Christian Management Association, it merged with the Christian Stewardship Association, then APU got involved in it. And for a year, there was no identity. No idea of who are we, what are we, where are we going. It was just stuff, and it was just this thing that was in motion, right? So we started the process of finding our way home. And I began it with the past, which I thought that I let the first boat go. Well, they had never left the shore to the other side of the digital space. And there were old and archaic ways things were being done. And actually, we had a digital footprint, which was important for a ministry that doesn't sit in a business, right? We were so old in our system and our framework that every time we had to adjust the placement of a comma, we had to fill out a work order and send it into a web tech team. Oh yeah, painful. So whoever was who we had designing the web at the time, they had to go back and do that. And then the way we were processing and making content available, we were burning thousands of CDs. Nothing was digital. We weren't taking advantage of the space at all. So I got a whole lot of clarity, and then I got a whole lot of clarity of this evolution. I also got a study of the demographic. And we were older because we're serving the leadership in nonprofit ministries, so they tend to skew a little bit older in age. And it was painfully clear to me that this was not a group that were even part of the digital immigrant population. Nobody was moving. Some of the ministries that we served had maybe a presence on Twitter, but all they were doing was maybe following 2 people and just saying the same thing over and over again and really not engaging at all. So there was a huge, again, in my heart saying, there's just such an opportunity here. And I could see that digital divide. And what I did know about CLA is that we had these amazing leaders with amazing ideas that needed to be transferred to another generation. And if it wasn't being transferred in a way that was relevant, all of that wisdom would be missed. And that there was a gap in terms of who would be the next leaders that would take over and run the next World Vision, the next Compassion. These huge organizations, and then there was another generation that was bubbling up and replicating a lot of the work that was being done with the larger ones because they had the ability to address all of this. So we were present to the fact that there was indeed a gap. And then as we started to look to the future and what was possible for CLA, we said, you know what? People are going to need, we're in the land of creators. Several years ago, I listened to Andy Crouch, and I love the way he said there was that period of time when we were citizens, then we became consumers, and now we're creators. And so as we looked at this, that we needed to have a way that the spirit of CLA and the collaboration of CLA would have a home and a place that it could be, and that we would have to find ways that we could deliver relevant content, how and when those who needed it could receive it. So it went back to the significance of seeing clearly. Now, I know that this is a digital tech conference, but I really want to encourage you in this space because it's really going back to these basics. Whether you work in a ministry or you're on staff in a ministry, or maybe some of you are consultants, right? You help ministries, and you're on that all the time. Anyone can pick up the phone and say, I need a website or I need a digital this, and can you do that? And most of you could probably figure out, yeah, this is how we do that. But in the absence of these 3 things, it's such a huge and extraordinary miss. And as, digital folks in this space, and people who I believe have a heart for the kingdom and the gospel, I don't want you to miss out on the importance of these 3 things as the prelude to really trying to take the digital piece to life. So the brand, the outcomes, and the strategy in that order, because that's not typically the order that you see them. This whole idea of brand really creeps ministries out, right? They're like, we don't want to be, we're all about the kingdom. We do not want to be thought of as a bottle of Tide or something like that. But it's really defining that clearly so people understand it. And the thing about the word brand, especially if we've got marketers, everybody has a different definition, right? We did an initiative at Thomas Nelson, and we were going to do this whole brand focus. We had all these people in the room, and we said, this is it. And we never stopped to say, this is what we mean by brand. And we literally messed everything up for 12 months. Oh, yeah. It was disastrous. And it took us so long to go back and say we didn't understand it. So for the purposes of this conversation, brand is simply an emotional and an intellectual connection that someone has with what it is that you do. Real simple. Okay, so it's not necessarily a package, but it's just, it's really that heart and that head. So we went all the way back in time and really had to go back and do these things that you guys probably have sat through 1,000 classes on, and probably some of you even lead these discussions about the whole strategic foundation. And really that is going back and saying, all right, what is that vision? What is that mission? What are those core values? And not in a way that they're pretty on paper, but in a way that they really can have life and continue to breathe. For us, I started with the core team. Sometimes organizations have these things handed down to them or imposed on them, and then what really happens is whoever the leader is in the organization, that really ends up being the values of the organization, and then the culture just tends to follow it. So don't mess with that. Just go in with that kind of understanding. So I started with my team, and my team was shocked. They were like, we've never been asked that. The board has just always told us what those things were. So we went through that whole deep process and then served those back to the board, and then served it to, key stakeholders within the organization, and just started to fold people in to the conversation. And then we relooked at the vision of what we were going to do, and then the mission, and actually did that terrible wordsmithing, which, every word matters, right? And just said it has to drip from your lips, and we have to say it in 12 words or less. And I can't tell you the difference that made. And then with everything that you see up there, assign behaviors, because it's great to have core values, but what does it look like when it's put in action? And if you can define what the behaviors of your values look like when they're tested, then when they're tested, you've already rehearsed and understood how it is that you're going to behave and how you're going to respond in a way that's consistent to that connection. And then we talked about what the expression of that looks like in the world. And now ministries, for us, all the ministry we work with, the end game is we want to transform the world for Christ, right? We're all about how are we going to advance the gospel. And it doesn't matter what the ministry is, they may go about it in a different way to get into relationship with the individual, but the final deposit is always the gospel. And that's really what it's consistently about. So we spent time on our distinctive, and for us it was this whole idea that there was this business part of running your ministry, but what you really needed to do is see it through a biblical worldview and through the best practices of others, that we were different than a college setting. We were saying, this is what works, and we had ministry sharing with ministry, this is what works. And then we went through what is traditionally done, the whole idea of personality. And the first two you see up, or the first and the last one up there, trusted authority and partner, our people told us that. We surveyed our membership, and this is what they said, and this is what they felt. So it needed to be represented because the equity in that was already present. And then we knew, because we had to cross that digital divide, that it was going to be important to be progressive and dynamic. That we, in many ways, were going to lead our ministries into spaces that they had not been in before. So brand expression. So the sum of that became an important framework of not just guiding the things that we did, but everything that we were talking about. And even when we went to the point where we started talking about what is that digital expression, we were constantly checking ourselves back against this. That we knew that we had to be that deliberate and that intentional in setting up our website and our whole digital presence. Now up there I said on that slide that there is, getting the foundation right, and then there's outcomes. And all of that before strategy. Most people say, oh, we need a strategy for that. And our strategy is we're going to figure out our core purpose and our vision and our mission, right? That comes after that, because strategy is so much the how. But we said, what is it we're going to cause? Because especially if you're getting ready to change something out, you have to stand on the other side of it and you say, what's it going to look like? And I'm not talking SMART goals. I'm not talking those kinds of measurables. It's what are we going to create with the things that we do? And then in turn, how is that website and how are all of those touch points going to contribute to that? So outcomes. So the first outcome we wanted to create was the whole idea of accessibility. That we knew that things had to be easy, and we knew that we had a digitally challenged membership. So as easy as we could make it, as clean as we could make it, for people to be able to get out and find what they wanted in a variety of formats. Because people had different comfort levels, obviously, with the tools that they were doing. So accessibility, great accessibility was a huge outcome for us. Connection. Even in the mission statement, to equip and unite. And as I said, as we were observing what was happening, there were a lot of ministries online, but none of them were in community with each other. They were just standing on platforms, shouting at each other, showing pictures of the great work that they were doing, but nobody was loving and living it out the way that they needed to online. So we wanted to promote that community and that connection, and we found out that the annual conference was the most beloved thing that we did, and what was so great about that is people could come and be in fellowship. Right. So how do you continue that experience? So, connection. We wanted the members to say, being a part of CLA means that we belong to something bigger than ourselves. The other outcome was engagement. Sometimes in marketing that's just talked about conversion, but we wanted people to be connected, but then we wanted to take everything that we were doing, and we had members on a roster that said, oh, we're members, but then we would just track their activity. And we said, no, if you want to belong, we want you contributing. We want you taking advantage of the resources there, or why would you even belong? So we wanted higher levels of engagement. And then transformational influence. For us, that made the list because we knew that we were dealing with 6,000 leaders in huge ministries, that when they would make a decision, truly, there would be millions of people standing in the wake, and the consequence of it would be eternity. So we knew that it had to be different. And we know that if you can transform the leader, it can, in fact, transform the ministry, and then that transforming power can be released out into the world. So outcomes. So we got the strategic foundation, we've got the framework, we see what it is that we want to cause and create, and then we got to building strategy and said, how are we going to do that? If that's what we want to look like, what were the things that had to happen in between? So for us, part of the strategy was focused conversation. Now in my publishing life, this was always an interesting conversation because people would write a book proposal. And they would say, oh, and this person would love this book, and this person would need this book, and oh, I think that we could go to this group. And they were trying to say, how wide can I make this so that this is something for everyone? And you know, it's very difficult to be something for everyone. So for us, the first strategy is, who is really the target? I always use Rick Warren as a great example because he's so clear. He says, you know, I'm pastoring to pastors. That's my conversation. And I guarantee you, the people that pay attention to him are so beyond the pastor group. If you know who it is that you're talking to across the table and you keep that conversation going, others lean in and listen, and they can benefit from it. So the idea that says, oh, well, you could get that church market in, and you could do this, and you could do that, and it takes your eye off the focus, it's important, especially when you start developing out the digital components of the strategy. So for us, it was focusing the conversation on nonprofit leaders. The second part of the strategy really had to do with working the content hard. Because remember I said there was like this huge thing of, now I'm not like really calling you out or anything, but these are chocolate covered espresso beans. So feel free to take a few and just pass them around. It'll just give you a little, whoop. I'm not, not sleeping, but I could just, they hadn't been there for the first round of allocation. So working content hard and saying, how can we take what we have and continue to repurpose it, and repurpose it, and then how would the website enable those types of things to happen? The third strategy was really deliberate collaboration. So if we knew the content that we had and how we wanted to work with it, it was really identifying people that were out there that could help us do that, and do that well. And then as we were thinking about new initiatives, we were also thinking about who do we deliberately collaborate on to fund that initiative. Okay? Pretty typical in a nonprofit space. As you're developing things, you want to engage people into a generosity place where they feel like I can contribute to that and I can resource it. So it became very strategic. And we really started to think what would be important to people that would come in and sponsor the collaboration and the advancement of the things that we were trying to create. So being intentional, not just running after it and saying, yes, you're in, you'll do it, but who really would be the best person or organization to help us with that? And then relevant resources. You know, a lot of times we do things because they think they're neat. I'll never forget when we did Borders.com. Somebody said, wouldn't it be really cool and slick if we could take the author events that we did in stores and we videotaped them, and then people could go on the website and watch the author in the bookstore. I know, you're going, really? But at one point, that was really an innovative thing to do. So we spent tons of money. We went to New York. We had a big launch party. We filmed our first one in a downtown New York store. And it was great, and people came, and we sold nothing. So all that technology for technology's sake was such a waste of resources just because we thought it was cool. It wasn't relevant. So for us, the strategy is checking and developing a process that would say we would introduce, we would focus group, we would pilot, we would test, we'd push back on it, we would roll in others before we would go really live with anything and make sure that there was really a demand for what it was we were providing. And then communication consistency. And I'm sure you hear that over and over again. It's just being on point at every point of touch. Over and over again, especially for us as we were recreating ourselves. If you're starting something new, you can evolve that much easier. But if you're really trying to create new culture and new impress, it's different. So now you've got the framework. Now you got the process we go through. We got the outcomes. We know which direction that we're going, and we've got these strategies. And it was time to create Homebase. So we stepped back and we asked some really critical questions, and we actually used outside professional help. I'll tell you, this whole brand journey, if you think, oh, I know enough and I can sit down and do it for myself, the hardest thing you could ever do in your life is try to really work on your own brand. Because you need people who sit on the outside that can really tell you what you look like, because you can never see yourself as clear as someone else can see you. So we worked with a firm, we got a tagline, we got a handle, and we said, all right, that's a banner, that's a look and feel. We're going to get rid of powder baby blue and that other horrible shade of blue that we were using, and said, okay, we're going to shift a little bit. And we built the whole story around higher thinking. But what was important to us is we said, it's got to be dynamic. Whatever we build has to be nimble, it's got to be powerful, we've got to be able to build on and expand, and it has to play well with others. Because as an organization, we had one group that we used to manage our membership and alliance. We had another group over here that was managing our financial transactions. And then there was another group that was providing content. And we said, whatever this platform is, it's got to work with everybody. So it has to be dynamic. The second thing was administration. Intuitive, low-tech, simple, and that we would manage the content. I said, I will never call another web tech guy and say, could you move that comma where it belongs, without having to fill out a work order, right? So I said, we need to be the managers of our content, and it needs to be the kind of system that if we typo, we go in, we fix it, and that we've all got each other's back, and it's easy. Now, when I talked about the fact that we had a huge digital divide, I had a major one with my staff. Okay, imagine this is 2012. I have no staff on Facebook. I have no staff on Twitter. I have no staff that even reads or subscribes to blogs. I'm serious, just caught in this little thing. And I'm thinking, okay, this is really scary. Remember, I know enough to be dangerous, and now all of a sudden I'm a voice of authority. I thought, Lord, there is such a gap. You have really got to come fill it. So I knew that whatever we created, everybody had to be on board, and it had to be so easy to get into, that I didn't need a tech person to really manage the site. And then the third one is that there would be an engaging user experience, that it'd be clean, it'd be compelling, and it would be demographically relevant. Now I know that there are some rockin' websites out there. I mean, there are some slick things. In fact, the other day, I was lost on Whiteboard. They create websites. I don't know if anybody's familiar with them. That is like the most amazing website, because you go in and you see it scroll, and then it's like they're in their office talking to each other, and you're going, this is just so cool. But it is so not us. So this idea of who is your demographic and what's going to make sense, again, cool for cool's sake, is really a very bad strategy. So we knew that we needed to keep it simple, especially if we were helping people make their way across. So here was the first expression of it. Radically different, I think, than what you saw the first time. And basically, you're seeing everything except the bottom bar. Now, the thinking behind that at the top was really simple. It's like, all right, we want to organize the nav bar, and we were just thinking, what generates the most activity? What are people already engaged in? We want to do that first. And then the mandate was that every single page of the website had to be viral. Typically, the social media pieces of that, you click on it and you're just following the organization, right? We said, no, we want you to follow the organization, and then we want to hit a share button. So every single page can be shared. Someone wants to know about something? Every single page. There was Giving Tuesday last year, and there were a lot of nonprofit ministries that were on Twitter, and they were talking about, oh, it's Giving Tuesday, and they were running around trying to figure out what their message is and what a landing page and how they could just jump on board. All we had to do was go to our donate page and hit share, and we raised silly money that day just using what we had because the page itself was shareable. This is actually a dynamic slider, and I love it because I go in and I can play with the copy all the time. One webinar changes, another one goes in. We can go in, we can design the graphic, we can sign the field, but it's always saying what it needs to say, and much like the top nav bar, it's like anything, you click on it and you can get there. So on point with what was most important to our members. The middle became a place of invitation because, again, now we're building a digital strategy and we're trying to attract people that had never been here. And we wanted to have a little of that dynamic, progressive feel. And again, you've got to remember the audience because I know there's like some really dynamic and progressive stuff out there. But we said, all right, just come explore us. And you'll see that in each one of these as they go by, interesting copy, and then it's always about key links we want them to go to. And in this thing, we wanted to always just talk about what does it mean to belong to the organization. So with every one of them, it's about how you can engage, and it's the website page that would take them there to show them how they would do it. Like this is engage. So membership, of course, belonging is engaging. The blog, of course, they can subscribe, they can get and hear about us. And then they can contribute content, which is such an important part of it. Because if you belong, we want your heart. We want your thought leadership to be part of the organization. Experience, again, membership, but then it was about conferences and continuing education and how you could learn and how you could grow. And then belonging, not only being a member, but then how do you invest in it. A strategic decision that sometimes you don't see in nonprofits because we're always looking for ways to have revenue streams that come to us, and advertising is always a good one. We opted not to advertise on the site. So all of these widgets down here at the bottom could be thumbnails, they could be spaces that we could sell, but we knew we needed to tell our story well. So all the widgets are our widgets, with the exception of one where we link to ECFA, because we thought, just again from a credibility standpoint, they could see what's happening in the news in the nonprofit space. But continuing to use our real estate to tell our story, and that knowing that some of those obviously would create revenue streams. And then another look at a nav bar. Just easy, simple ways for people to try to understand what we're doing. Now, I'm not going through the whole website, but the landing page is what is really most important. The key is that in the website, there isn't anything that you could ask me about the organization that I could not send you a link about it. Nothing. And we always are testing ourselves. Well, if this is happening, can we send there, and can that tell the whole story? So when I'm on LinkedIn and people say, tell me about CLA, sure. And I say, here's where you can find out, and I just send them those links. It is so easy than saying it over and over again. Another important part is the whole idea of content. We are a content-rich ministry. So we have lots of stuff that go out, and again, we're trying to figure out the relevant products. And we have key things that contribute to that. Now, we just are changing the name of our conference. It was just the CLA National Conference. So we're changing it to the Outcomes Conference. That's the name of our magazine that's produced every quarter. At that conference, over 400 hours of workshops, much like you're doing here, much like we're filming here today. We have all of that content. And there's a small group that gets it, but once they get it, we try to think, how do we transport that? Because if we can get it to more people, we can do more ministry. More ministries can get stronger, and the kingdom can continue to be advanced. So we have done all sorts of things there in that, how do we leverage the content with our conference? And even as we go into this next year, we're thinking very deliberately about what it is that we need to be talking about, and the timeless quality of it and the current quality of it for our members. This kind of blows my mind. We have a printed magazine. Now, when I left publishing, I would have never thought we had a printed magazine. And I got to tell you, since we've started marketing and positioning it, our subscriptions are up. And it's ridiculous. And every year I say, now I'm not so sure this is going to continue. But people love it because it's low on advertising and it's rich in content. And we're intelligent about that and how that connects to the conference, how that connects to themes. It all has a sense, it all has a purpose in the way that it goes, and people love it. And we do make it available online, but only to members. So it's part of a member benefit that you actually can see the content in a digital format online. But it's another huge source that we aggregate lots of content that eventually can be pushed out into the blog, into other places. And if we get people featured in the magazine, we can direct them to an upcoming webinar, online academy.
Member equals subscriber? You're saying members?
No, people can just subscribe. Now, if you're a member, you automatically get it. It's part of your membership benefit.
And subscribers get the digital copy?
No,
You have to be a member.
a member,
Not just a subscriber.
not just a subscriber. And then created a blog. And again, simple, easy. We focus on 8 categories. So we focus the conversation, we focus what we talk about, and we just make it very, very easy. And then everybody's familiar with digital papers, right? You've seen them, have you? They aggregate off Twitter. This is such a perfect match for us, and it's an introduction to new and fresh content. We literally go through, and I curate this on Twitter. I have 186 leadership voices that feed into it, and it's the primary source for that paperly. Paid a little bit to get the upgrade. And again, use all the advertising spaces to promote our own activities and our own resources. And then it's bringing new people in, new voices, and there's a strategic intention in that you have leadership thinkers. You know, these are the 5 things that you need to do, you know, to change the world. And then we have the world changers. So we have our ministries feeding in, talking about what they're doing on the field, and then we have thought leaders that are saying, this is just good principle and practice. It goes out every day, and the circle of influence on what we aggregate is, on an average week, it's like 2.5 million people. Wow. Which is just huge. And again, they don't know what it is, but it's just another port of entry for us. And it's great because it's articles and blogs. And for me, when I go in on our Twitter handle, I can go through the daily paperly, and all of a sudden, I don't even have to search for great content to feed out on our Twitter streams. I mean, it's really a beautiful thing if you're in a space of wanting to aggregate content. And then coming this summer is CLA TV, and it's internet television. And this is something that is brand new, but it will now give us the opportunity to aggregate video content. So now we'll be able to have streaming video for our members, or for anyone really, 24/7. And the beauty of the platform, which is a little hard to see here, is that anything on it can be shared. And you can even edit down the things that you're watching. We gave a sneak preview at the conference, and it was crazy, the results that we got. And we were competing with our own conference, go figure. But people were finding their time back at the room. And even the programming that we were tweeting about, people found their way to other programming, and the number one thing watched was something we never even tweeted about once. Isn't that amazing? So people find what they want, but the beauty of the platform is it can be embedded in anybody's blog, so people can watch it. It has radio coming in, so we've secured all of Ambassador's radio, Christian radio content for it. On it, you can, whatever you're watching, you just click down and you can read about it, and there's a link. So any ministry or anybody that we feature on TV, they can get a link and they can go right to them, because it's really not about us, it's about aggregating and providing resources, right? If you're watching this and there's somebody on there and they're talking about a ministry and you're moved and compelled, you can donate. So we set up a system that people could automatically donate to a ministry that they just fell in love with, that they were watching on TV. And what I really personally love about this, if I'm watching leadership content and I know I have a struggle in my life, and that this is a leadership message, but I know that I gotta do some business with God, it links in to Need Him, to the Billy Graham Association, to Groundwire, and you can get 24/7 chat. And if you want to make a decision for Christ, it will lead you on that path. So for leaders, again, focus content on a channel that's leadership that's being aggregated so that anyone can dial in, and then it has on-demand features and all that. But again, it's content that we can bring together, and much of the content like you're videoing here, we did at our conference, becomes content that we can also use on this platform. So, core places that we're leveraging the content, that are on point, that are focused to the audience we want. Then we just started the highway construction. So we've got Homebase, and I know you've heard it and you've probably taught it 1,000 times. We make sure all roads lead home. So blogging, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Pinterest. Who would have ever thought people would come to a Christian Leadership Alliance Pinterest board and repin our stuff? They do. So I make sure that all that content that goes in whatever that box is on Pinterest sends them someplace that could be meaningful or another portal. The digital paper, huge for us. And then we also strategically partnered with iDisciple and Ministry Grid at Lifeway Resources. So our primary conversation is with the nonprofit leader, but for Ministry Grid, at least it gives us exposure into the church market. And we aren't really working that, but it's just good for us to be able to do that. And then the National E-Station. So everything that you see as part of the strategy takes you back to the website. Now we do ongoing assessment. I mean, we're watching our metrics. You could get crazy on metrics, right? I try not to. I only look at them every 3 months because anything could happen on any one day. We have other things. I mean, you just intuitively see when there's a spike or something happens. We're always looking at routine scheduled enhancements, which is one of the benefits that I think if you're on the web development side of this, the more that you can empower your users and your clients to do their own maintenance and their own content, and you spend your time bringing to them innovation, new ideas, the better it is. So for us, we always have 3 things in the queue. There is with the development, we have the page that is always being in process, it's being on the development site, we're looking at it, we're getting it set. The second one is always one that we know is next in the queue, so our developers know that's the next thing we want to do. And then we always plant the third one, which is just the next big idea. We just say, oh, by the way, once we get that. And we never give our web tech people more than those 3 things. Because we really want them focused, and we don't want to overwhelm them, and we really want great stuff every time we work through that phase. So we always have routine scheduled enhancements, and then we do intentional exploration. And I will tell you that sometimes I have really digital envy, because I go and I see these really neat things, and I love technology and things that it could do. But we try to hold back, and we say, all right, how do we interpret that? So, I came clean and said, I looked at Whiteboard and fell in love with just how dynamic that site was. Well, when we changed the name of the conference, we knew that we needed something to trigger that made it a little bit more disruptive, that we were going to do something different with the conference. So we gave it a very different look and feel, but still very connected to what was happening. So the ongoing assessment is definitely part of this case study. So where are we? Outcomes. Like I said, everything links to everything that we do, and all roads lead home. Yes? Oh, thank you. And I didn't even have one of my espresso beans. So that's how we're feeling about accessibility. Connection. Right now we're working through about 50,000 leaders and connections, and we're leaving about 7.5 million impressions in the marketplace. Now, I'm not saying they all know the story, but we are really starting to see movement. And for the past, the 5 years before I came to CLA, things were on a decline, and we've literally reversed all those metrics in engagement, attendance, membership. Right now, membership is up 37%, which is just crazy. And it's like real legitimate membership, people that are coming on board and then they're contributing and they're participating. And every program enrollment is up, so growth is good. Transformational influence is always so difficult to see. But here's where I have encouragement. When we did the last conference, all those major ministries that we worked with, it was the first time we had a conference, and every single one of those CEOs and their leadership teams were participating in the conference. And they weren't just showing up, but they were literally there teaching, engaging, and being part of the experience. And so we know, again, the power that if they get it and they're reinforcing the learning that's taking, that it can have a huge impact, that they're really getting good ideas that they can take to the road and they can make a difference for the kingdom. So the big thing, I know we're in the midst of digital, I just want to stress again the importance of that brand exercise and really making it real. And then really thinking about what is it that you're trying to cause, so that whatever is being designed, whatever widget, whatever tool that you're looking at, you're saying, how does that contribute to what we want to create? And then build your strategy. And then go back and say, what are the hows that can bring that to life? So any questions about any of that? That's the CLA story. That's your case study for this conference. Anybody need more espresso beans?
Do you have a staff for this?
Do I have a staff? We outsource our web and tech. So we use a firm in Brentwood, Tennessee. And, we run that off a retainer. We know approximately how many hours of development it'll take for some of the things that we do. So that helps it. I do not have a social media staff. Literally, the boot camps that you guys go through at some of these conferences, I put them through 2 full days of social media boot camp. And now I am so proud of them because they are all over it. And they're excited. They're actually engaging in it. In fact, a lot of the things that I used to go in and do, they're already getting done because they're having fun with it, it's easy, and there's a rush. Let's face it, when you go on and you can make a change and you hit the publish button and everything looks different, and you get to be in that creator zone, they are loving it. Candidly, I believe that if I had a staff that I could dedicate it to it, I could even do more. But it's just not there. We're just not at that season yet. And that's okay. This is where we are in our journey. And, as we continue to see that progress, we'll continue to invest in that. We'll continue to do those things. I had the opportunity the other day sitting with Christine Kane and a group, visualizing a new initiative, and met a woman who does Twitter and all of those things for all of these high-profile people. And I was like, wow, what a luxury to be able to have someone that could man that. For us right now, I think it's okay because we're not pushing out content. I'm talking to people. When the daily paperly goes out, you can hit the Twitter button and it'll automatically populate it with people. I never automatically populate it with people. I hit that button and I try to say something fresh that truly is inspiring me about what's being featured in the paper today, and I list specific people. And I don't do it because of their following, and I do it because whatever they shared that day personally resonated with me. And I feel that that sincerity will have a much greater reward in the long run than just saying, oh, well, maybe if I tweet them and they tweet us back, then that's going to be that many more. And, and that has its place. But right now, I think if we can do that, and I also curate that, that just follow function on Twitter, we use that. And here's my position. If you don't follow us, we don't follow you. We don't get emotional about it. We don't try to make a big deal out of it. And I go through and I'm always checking. If people have unfollowed us, I just unfollow them and I just move on. Because for us right now, that conversation and that engagement is so precious, I don't want to cloud it with other things that don't make sense in there. And that's okay. So I'm always cleaning a house and I get that positive reinforcement. Yeah, you're so cool. You're not following, and you've cleaned up your account. Joe.
Yeah, so since you live in Tennessee and you guys have offices, your main offices out here, how are you guys leveraging some of the technology to manage your leadership? Because you guys are split around different places, and so I'm sure you've got to be doing some.
No, that's a good question. Actually, only half my staff is in San Clemente, and that's really kind of a lot of the administrating. That's my educational counselor, that's my registrar, that's my accountant. That's all that group. I'm in Tennessee. Then we have events planners, design folks in different places, which are good places for them to be. It just so happens the web is where I live. But actually, I never go visit them. I do it all online. And then Scott, who is over Vice President of Content, is in Washington, D.C. And I was a little concerned about that myself because I had never been in that environment that was so, now I'd been in multi-channel retail, where I had 450 stores around the world. So I kind of got an idea of what it is to not lead when you're in the building. But with an intimate team, it was concerning. So the first thing I did was I had the Best Christian Workplace do a survey. And I just really intended it to be a survey so I could just see how people felt about this, not having us all together. And so we did the survey, we got it back, and it was great. And then God just shocked us to death that we ended up being a Best Christian Workplace. And we worked really hard on it. And then the next year we took the survey again, and we hit the status that now we're certified forever kind of Best Christian Workplace. And I think it's important that you're checking in and asking that. So when we do those assessment tools, we talk about it. What do we need to do? And then I pull it out every 3 months and I said, okay, this was our strategy that we said we were going to do to be better at what we do. I mean, excellence is a core value of ours, so we need to model what we're trying to pass on to other ministries. So we have open dialogue and we hold ourselves accountable and we stay after it. So we work hard, and I would contend that we probably have more connectedness than we did when I lived in organizations that had floors and floors of cubes. We just took on new technology, and I just signed up for it yesterday. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called Blue Jeans. Love that technology, and I'm so stoked because there's so many things that we're going to be able to do. It's a much more refined version of Skype, in that we can pull people in. It'll have a Google Plus Hangout type of thing. I can get 25 people. I can't wait to do this with my board so that when we're on our conference calls, I can actually see the things that they're doing and the things that we're talking about. But you can record. We can download it to MP4s. I think it'll be neat. I mean, Joe, a lot what you do with the radio station, how you do those digital interviews, we'll be able to do that and have that. And I just like the secure nature of that, versus Skype, where they're using your network to route things through, and Google Plus, someone could potentially, I guess, get into it if they saw that. So I think that's going to make us even more connected, to be able to have anytime that you can talk. We use FaceTime and things like that, but this is just kind of neat because it'll be our system that's internal. But there's no reason not to be. When I told you I took them through digital boot camp, I made them go to a private Facebook group. I set up Team CLA, and I said, that's where I'm communicating things. So you have to go in and use your Facebook account to go in and find out what we're talking about. I mean, it's the only way that you can do it, is you just got to get people into it. And now they all have their own accounts, and they're having so much fun with it. And it's just neat to see them grow, and to see them grow not only in the influence of technology for technology's sake, but they share a passion I do, that just making sure whatever we do really is reflecting the character of Christ, and that when we go in, we pray before we go online. And we really think that, Lord, when I'm in that stream, I really believe that whatever I see in that stream is God's people for me in that moment. And I pay attention to who the conversations are with and what's happening. And I just feel like that's who I'm given to steward and engage with in that day. And I know they share that same feeling. Any other questions? My man Jason.
I have a question about the internet TV.
Yeah.
How are you going to choose what content going forward as far as what you put there? So last time you talked about the conference.
The conference. Well, we've already, we've got strategic partnerships. So in working with Ministry Grid, they are actually aggregating lots of video content, so we'll be working with them. We're actually working with the Salvation Army. They created a version of an internet television called Savin' out on the West Coast, but basically what it is, when you go there, it's all Salvation Army stuff, and it's just all about them. So we think that's a great opportunity to take some of that leadership content to this platform, and then people can connect back and find out more what the Salvation Army is doing. growing leaders. We're really passionate about their content, Dr. Tim Elmore, and just that connection with the younger generation. And we know our generation, I'll speak for myself, my generation, needs to understand how to be more relevant to that younger generation. So they'll be supplying content, Lead Like Jesus, from the standpoint of, Christ as a role model and what does that look like, and when we try to follow in his footsteps and his example. So they're going to be contributing to it. So it's really looking at some strategic content partners to begin with. That are members, that are part of this. We also are working with the Colson Center. They're doing a lot in that space. In fact, when we did the sneak preview, we did their whole ethics series. So we have a great relationship with them, and they'll be part of the content that will be featured. And just to start it, we'll set content at a week at a time, and then we'll reschedule it throughout that week, and then we'll watch it. We'll see how it behaves. And just like anything else, we just have the patience to say, let's just see what sticks, and let's just go. And so I'm really excited about it. And again, it was crazy at the conference. You saw up there, that was Israel Gaither, who was the commander for the Salvation Army. And we put on there for the sneak preview his devotions from the conference in 2013. Number one, got to, and it wasn't even like we had extraordinary people from the Salvation Army at the conference. We had a good showing, but not enough to drive those numbers. But it was just the content. And people got in there, and they stayed in there. They stayed in there, and they watched program after program. It was really, kind of blew our mind a little bit. Now, and all this stuff that's on there, people could find them on 1,000 different YouTube stations or different ways that people are aggregating. But it's just something about saying, here's CLA. This is who we're having a conversation with. This is what we have available for you. And here you can go, and you can tune in, and you can see it. And I don't think you can, when I talked about relevant, it's very difficult to even imagine being relevant right now without a strong video component to the plan. You get that. I know you get that.
When you measure quarterly, like you mentioned, are there tools that you're using or thoughts or processes?
Well, we have our Google Analytics that are all set up, for the website and the things that we do. And then, there's a lot of different Twitter type things that you could go to that look at like Twitter reach. We're all in clout, and so we watch some of those numbers. And I don't hang up so much in the numbers as much as I do the movement forward, and just, are we making progress? And I always think of things as directional. I used to do a lot of different kinds of marketing research, and so I just don't hang there and say, okay, it's 48, how do we get to 49? I just, what is that movement? And then if there's something that's disruptive or isn't happening, we just really try to understand it. So that's why I like to look at things in just a little bit bigger block of time. It was interesting, like for the Online Academy, we've been trying all sorts of different things, and we just published a blog this week that just went nuts. And all of a sudden, it ended up being, Jason's nodding, he's on faculty for this next round. But easy, like everybody on staff said, oh, we can totally do that. We featured the high caliber staff that's going to be teaching at the faculty. It was so easy for them to do that. We linked it to all of their different organizations so people got an idea of the quality of people that were coming, linked it back to the website, and we've just never had that kind of early response. So it was really neat. So it's experimenting. And I never fret over, everything doesn't have to be perfect that first time. You have to go out and it doesn't work, so you try something else. You just have to have the perseverance. I believe it's perseverance that builds maturity so that you can be complete and lacking in nothing. So we just persevere on the road to maturity and understanding. But it's fun, and it's a great relationship along the way. And I have a heart because a lot of our ministries, again, they haven't even gotten on the boat yet. And I feel part of our witness as Christians is that we need to excel with excellence in this space, and that the internet is actually a place for us to subdue for God's glory. And that we need to be an example. So, anything else? Yes?
Okay, so you get a brand new leader, becomes a member of COA. How do you get them to contribute content?
Well, you know what? Well,
And what kind of content are you asking?
well, we have a page on the website, and it talks about various levels. From you could be faculty on the Online Learning Academy down to you want to be a volunteer at the conference. I mean, it's really all these different ways that you can plug in and that you can contribute. You could do a workshop. We just sent out proposals for the conference last year. In 2013, we got 300 proposals for 100 slots. So amazing content. I mean, that was probably the most painful thing we ever did, was who not to go, because we knew it was all great. And so we just encourage people to do that. In fact, when I came on board at CLA, you know, we had some work that we had to do to just kind of turn things around a little bit. And I made a trip to Seattle to visit World Vision. And again, we have a special connection with them because of Ted Engstrom kind of having an early vision for it. And typically, someone from CLA had gone to World Vision and basically asked for donation support. And I went, and I had all of the financial people around the table. I met with Rich first, and it was good because I knew Rich because I was his publisher for The Hole in the Gospel. And so met with him, and then I was meeting with all of them, and they were so used to CLA coming at some point and just saying, you know, would you want to be part of this? Would you want to donate to this? And so they were standing there, and there was this moment when it was the appropriate time to ask that, and they said, what can we do? How can we help you? And I said, bring me back your heart. Show up. You have leaders all over the place, and you're so focused on ministry. You're a leader among leaders. Why don't you give back? Help other ministries know how to do it. And it was shocking. But it was amazing what happened in terms of their level of involvement of just thought leadership, ideas. I didn't get a penny because that wasn't what it was for. It was about come and lead, give back to the body, help these other ministries. And it just changed everything. I mean, we have people from World Vision writing articles and doing things and just being part of the conference. We ended up being a platform for Rich Stearns after that crazy week and the decisions that were made there. And, you know, we kind of hung with them through that whole entire thing. And basically, he gave the membership of CLA the gift of giving the grace that we have so rarely for gifts that we have also been freely given, just to forgive and love him well. And so it was kind of an amazing moment in the history of CLA, and it was just a part of being there. It's just showing up, because we're so busy, and we have to pick and choose. But of course, I'm biased, but really, it's a worthy and noble thing to invest in the life of a leader, and to keep them on that journey and to encourage them along the way, because the ripples are enormous. We have no idea. In fact, we tried to do an impact report on all the ministries that are part of CLA and how many employees they had and then how many people they touch around the world. And, you know, we just had to put it away because it was almost like, Lord, we don't have the heart to even understand this. So we'll just trust you with it for a while. So, anything else? Yes?
It sounds like you have your own channel, CLA TV.
Mm-hmm.
Is there an advantage to that as opposed to having a YouTube channel?
Well, I mean, YouTube channel's great and people can find it. The thing about having our own channel is that we can do the programming. It'll drive people to the site because we actually house it on the CLA site. You can't see it yet, but it's there. So it brings people to it. We aggregate the leadership channel. There are other channels that are on the platform that are really part of our vision of the holistic approach to the leader. We don't think leadership's compartmentalized into just what you do in your ministry, but it's really the stewardship of your life and your resources and the God-honoring impact that you can have in all areas of your life. So on our E station, we have Max Lucado and Randy Frazee preaching through the Bible in 31 weeks. We have the chapel, which has a lot of pastors, you know, where you could go to their websites and see them, but we aggregate that and bring that in. Then there's a channel just called Deeper Life, which is really dealing with the other part of the Christian walk outside of leadership, and then we aggregate the leadership specific. And then we have radio. so people can do radio. So for us, it's just, what I think of it is where we have a paperly that prints digitally every day. Now we'll just have a site that will have video content on there. And I think in the long run, too, it's going to give a lot of the members of CLA an opportunity to have a place where they can get exposure that maybe they haven't. I mean, we have a lot of businesses that have made a decision, and maybe that's some of, I mean, I know that's some of you in here, that have made a decision that they're taking their gift and talent and time that they could take to the marketplace, and the marketplace would gobble that up, but they say, no, and we're going to take that and we want to take it to ministries so that they can be advanced. So we have a lot of thought leaders within the business membership within CLA that this would be a great time just for them to be able to make their services and products known and to deposit good teaching, understanding, and practical applications in the life of many leaders. Yeah.
Can I ask a follow-up?
Mm-hmm.
So I think I heard that YouTube is like the second or third biggest search engine now. So by not being on YouTube, pardon me if I'm ignorant, but it seems like you miss out on that opportunity.
You know, we could miss on it, but here's the thing. I could probably put downloads from the conference on YouTube and do that. But everybody else is out there. We are creating the platforms for the exchange to happen. So if our business was, Tami Heim was writing content for, you know, the 5 things that a leader needs to have. And, you know, if I was like a John Maxwell, or if I was, you know, an organization that was specifically doing that, I probably feel differently about a YouTube or a Vimeo account. But what I'm doing is we're basically saying, what is all that stuff that's out there? And let's have a platform where people can go that it's trusted. And then if people see that and they want to go deeper, then boom. Like if we have growing leaders on there and they like what they see with growing leaders and they think that's great and they're like, oh gosh, I want more of that content. The blessing for us is if they link and they go over and they find their YouTube page. Get even more than we could possibly provide them. So does that make sense? It's just a little bit different because of who we are. Now again, if we were creating that content ourselves, we were the creators, it would probably feel a little bit different. But really we're just trying to bring the best that's out there together, like we do for the conference, like we do with the Online Academy. I take that back. I am writing the first module ever on the Online Academy. I love you more than you know, because it's a whole lot of work. But we find experts. John and Jason have all written Academy courses, and so they're on the Online Academy, so we feature their work. It's not our work. It's under the umbrella for our membership and anyone who wants to do it. But we're not like the original content creator. So it's just a subtle difference. But I agree, if it was the other way around, we would be stronger on YouTube. And probably should think about that maybe for conference, but right now we'd really like to showcase and drive it to the TV station.
Since going to CLA, what would you say was the most effective change that you've made? And secondly, what would you say is unique about CLA?
Well, I would say probably what you're seeing here is the most unique thing is that we really just leapfrogged where we were and just really positioned ourselves very differently in that audience. I think the unique thing is there are lots of people out there that are maybe, here's what you do on board governance, here's what you do for fundraising, here's what you do in marketing communication, here's what you do that. We are one place that a nonprofit can go and they can get all of the 8 fundamentals. So we cover executive leadership, we cover fundraising and development, we talk about board governance, we talk about finance, tax and legal, got to have the tax and legal, and then we do invite in marketing communication, internet technology, and people care and management. So if you thought about, I'm going to run a business tomorrow, what are all the things that I need to think about? We provide all of those. Now, we provide them directly proportional to the demand because, again, tax and legal is essential, but not everybody in the nonprofit is going to want to know about tax and legal, right? Most people want to know about the executive leadership founded on biblical principle. So we're the business, I mean, we help people run the business of their ministry so that they have a solid foundation, again, can do it in a way that is so God-honoring and that they can get more stuff done. So that's what makes us, nobody's really doing all of those 8 that way. And then those that are out there doing it on their own, those individual things, we invite them to come and be part. I mean, I really don't feel a competitive spirit on that. I feel like, welcome. And if people that are here and they find you here and they go over there, we want them to go over there. We want them to get whatever they need to be really amazing at their ministries.
Tami, I'm hearing that a lot of leaders are using audiobooks in the car. They prefer to just drive. Is audiobooks, are you sensing any demand for audiobooks of your training materials?
Well, you know, we've played with audio, like the bookstore piece. I know, and this is so bad because this is so my past. I mean, I've flirted with the, okay, Amazon affiliate. No, don't feel completely about that. We have, you know, we feature Faith Village. They aggregate a bookstore page for us, which is awesome. You know, we send them the titles that they want to feature, and so we have a place that we feel good about sending people to. The books that we have created, you know, from a CLA perspective, you know, we've not flipped those to any kind of an audio format, and a lot of them are collection of stories. So it's just a small piece of what we do. We more showcase great thought leaders who are also authors, and then the audio piece, who they are. Yet. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I do a lot in the developing world where people are stuck in traffic for 2, 3, 4 hours
Yeah.
at a time. They listen to training on their cell phones. And so I'm just asking questions about if anyone's doing audio books, how are you doing them?
Yeah.
How do you do this well? Is it effective? So that's...
Yeah. Yeah, it's just not been a big enough piece of ours, and it could be something that evolves, but not so much. Now, you can get CLA TV. It's designed that it appears on any format. So like if you wanted to sit in traffic and turn on CLA TV and listen to it, you could. Or you could listen to the radio station. I mean, that would be one way to do that. That's a little clunkier than, you know, other ways that you might consume it, but that could be a possibility. That book business, you know, it just keeps after me some way or another. Yes?
So the Ministry Grid angle. So Ministry Grid's a paid service, and is the idea that you're just adding value by having it as a partner? Because I don't know, it's not like the users that come there that go to that portal or gateway to Ministry Grid, they don't get necessarily free content, right? I mean, that's a paid service.
Well, the paid service, the thing about Ministry Grid is really a platform that helps a church train and develop their people. So it's as much about the custom content. So if I'm a pastor and this is the church and I have new volunteers that are coming on board for managing traffic in my parking lot, I don't know, it's just random, but we'll pick it. Then I can download on the Ministry Grid platform our standards, our expectation, how it works, what you need to know to manage traffic in our parking lot. So train and develop. Now, for a senior staff, they may say, I want you to look at this video, I want you to watch this thing, and then they could pull it over and they do that, and then they have a development conversation around it. But I think Ministry Grid is the archive of things that are there and what. So if it's an executive pastor and we have something that's relevant on finances that's in there, or if it's the creative team and there's something in the archives from CLA that's going to be relevant, somebody may pull it over and it may just introduce them to here's CLA.
So it's just the content on there that was just a tease and it's just a pass through, or you've actually worked out with Ministry Grid to get some content that they actually post on your site?
Well, for Ministry Grid, the way that collaboration, I mean, it's really neat. They came to our conference, they live stream, and they videotaped. Now, in the past, we had done like this, but without this, where we would tape workshops. And do you know how miserable it is to listen to a taped workshop on a CD? Has anybody ever really done that? Because there's side conversations, there's things that happen, you don't see the visuals. I mean, it's really bad. So when I was talking about working hard the content, what we did differently this year is we took the best of the best, and there was a lot of best, so it was really, so if someone said, no, I went into that, we had plenty, right? We took the top 40, and then we went into a room, and instead of doing it like this, they stood in front of the camera, and they did high impact of what their message and what they were teaching. Then, instead of burning CDs all night to sell to people, we just said, here's a digital pass. So you can take the digital pass and you can go, and it's on the Ministry Good platform. And then they took content, and then they can take what they felt was relevant, and they did it there. So they basically became our publisher for that content, but then I have rights to all of that content to use on CLA TV.
Oh, you do? Okay. So
And then what I would do is if I did, let's say, here's the conference, and I have a speaker from the conference on TV, my drop down may say, this is from the CLA conference. If you want to watch more of the conference, go here, and it would go to that platform, and people could buy a digital pass and see more of it.
Okay, good.
So it's always doing that. It's the same thing with the blog. We never do a blog that at the bottom, first of all, I'm always linking the author and their business. So I want them to know, here's the thought leader, here's their bio, and then here is how you get in touch with their organization if you want more information. And then at the bottom, I try to be very relevant in what is the content marketing at the bottom. So if we're talking about board governance, and we have board governance coming up in the online academy, I'll talk about if you want to go deeper in board governance. So it's not a random thing. It's like saying, how is this really creating value for whoever's reading it all the way through?
Okay. Yeah, the only reason I was
Yeah.
asking is because that is a subscription-based vehicle. And
But that
so-
subscription is really taking care of the platform that the church uses to manage.
Right, yeah. I just didn't know how it made sense for you. Now I get it. So.
Yeah, and then it's just part of their archive. So, you know, they pay whatever they pay there. And in fact, I'm very interested in working and just saying, how could that platform ever possibly work for nonprofits? So that's something we're actually talking about. But that's a really unique kind of collaboration that I really celebrate because they have an expertise we don't. And again, if we can lift, I mean, I want them to do well. I mean, in fact, at CLA, when I talk to people or anyone that's in it, and I say, so how are you doing? And they say, it is so great. God is blessing like crazy. That's an answer to our prayer. Because we want anyone that touches and contributes to just have that blessing returned over and over and over again.
Right.
Because they give so freely to it. So, I think that's it. I think maybe one more, yeah.
Do you have time for one more?
Mm-hmm.
Because that, what you just said is kind of amazing to me. You had somebody who presented to the conference,
Mm-hmm.
and then you had them go into a room and present it again.
Yes, in a condensed form. Now, we typed where we captured all the general sessions. That's like 9. And we live streamed for the first time. We never live streamed. That was kind of crazy, but we live streamed for the first time. So that was a new
I'm
experience.
just thinking, how do I talk to a presenter and say, I'd like you to present twice, one for everybody else and one for really what you need?
Well, they do it in the workshop, and this dynamic's very different. But like if I was doing this and I was just in front of the camera, I would have a different kind of conversation than I would moving about here. And I would probably be able to get through key points faster because it's just easier. Yeah, it's just there isn't the same kind of distraction. So, you know, we call them, you know, our version, little CLA talks. And on average, they were, well, we had some that were as short as 7 minutes and some that maybe were at 20 minutes. But what happens is I go to the conference, I'm in that session and I love it. I go back and I have my notes and I'm going to share that with my team what I learned. Then I can go and flip to that video and then they get to hear that presenter. So it's a really neat dynamic way. It's great and they love it. And you know what? Truly, I think it's an amazing way to honor and respect those that give of their time so freely to do that. Because it's presenting them as a thought leader. It's connecting to them instead of, you know, it being this organization. You know, now they get. It was funny because we're tiny enough that I don't have time to negotiate all these different kinds of contracts or permissions, right? So, you know, we used our best, you know, to make sure that we could use the content appropriately. So we worked with our lawyer to get that all set. And we sent it out and we said, this is it. And we picked the top 40 or whatever. And we only had one pushback who didn't really look at it and just sent it to a lawyer. And it was someone that I would have really loved to have had on there, and he came back with this all marked out, and I just said, you know what, I so love, and I want you to be part of this. I can't manage this mini exception and do it well, and I don't want to risk the fact that I might not honor exactly the changes that you have in there, and so we'll just need to ask someone else. And he said, I'm in. He said, I'm in. I'm in. And it really wasn't a heavy-handed thing, because I don't want anybody to do anything that they don't want to do. But in this day and age, if someone is giving you the opportunity to allow you to showcase your message and your content in other places that other people can find you, that's one more opportunity for you to rise above the noise and be known. So, and there's still people that live in that space that think I have to protect all my content. I don't want to let any of this out, when it's really releasing. I mean, people use the example over and over again about TED Talks. People pay crazy money to go to the TED Talks, and they're all going to be online. But it's that experience of being there. And just getting it out. I mean, no one would pay what they pay for TED Talks if they weren't online and all out there, and people said, that's a really neat thing, and I want to go and I want to be part of it. So, candidly, as we've talked about in these other sessions, this is all a part of Christians being able to have great stuff out there and put a huge dent in the darkness of all the other stuff that's out there right now in that digital space.
Biola University offers a variety of biblically centered degree programs, ranging from business to ministry to the arts and sciences. Visit biola.edu to find out how Biola could make a difference in your life.